Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the 10 o'clock news on Q2, Montana's news leader.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Jeanelle Slade.
And I'm Russ Riesinger. Sunday night's hailstorm moved through fast but left behind plenty of damage.
From rooftops to windows to cars, the damage so intense in some cases that insurance companies have now classified the storm as a catastrophe.
And that has left many auto body shops scrambling to keep up with all the new business. One repair shop owner says the damage may be the worst since the 2010 Father's Day tornado.
And he's got some advice if your vehicle took a hit from the hail. Here's Q2's David J. with more. David.
Oh, Jeanelle, Russ, those shops have been busy this week with estimates, repairs, and working with insurance companies. One owner says it's important to find a reputable company that will properly do the repairs. Trackside Auto Body Repair and Billings has seen a lot of customers come in with the hail damage. Trackside owner Kevin Ballerhoven says that has led insurance companies to classify this as a damage from the storm as a catastrophe and bring more people to help with those claims. Van Lerhoven advises finding a place that guarantees its work and uses the right techniques to keep the paint from cracking.
Those cracks can be just a little 1/8 inch crack, and we're only talking a little crack, and it doesn't take much. And unless you had sometimes even a little microscope to see them, 90% of the people would never see them. We take a lot of pride in what we do, and a lot of shops in town actually take a lot of pride in what they do also. So as long as the customers are aware of all of this, they'll be fine. We'll get through all of this.
And Kevin Van Lerhoven says he had worked for about 1.5 years after that 2010 tornado. He expects damage from this storm to keep shops busy for the next year. Russ, Jeanelle?
All right, thank you, David.
Well, major hailstorms don't just deliver damage, they also bring out-of-state storm chasers.
Frauds who promise to fix your property but instead take your money and run. State Auditor Matt Rosendale sending this warning. He says take photos and thoroughly document all damage before beginning cleanup or repairs. Then contact your insurance company and get the claims process started.
Rosendale says make sure you understand your deductible and what is and isn't covered. Also, don't sign an agreement with a contractor until you've talked with your insurance agent. And always verify that the contractor you're talking with is registered to do business in Montana.
All right, turning to the weather now, and Chief Forecaster Bob McGuire joining us. Bob, we've seen a few storms again out there tonight.
Yeah, some of them had half-inch size hail tonight as they came down all the Beartooths and the Absarokas, but just about the time they got to the Billings area, the storms just started to fall apart. It's a downsloping wind effect. It has a tendency to heat up the air as the wind comes down the mountains. That heating up of the air has a tendency to dry up the storm before it gets to us. So you can see the storms that they started in Missoula. They made their way now into south central Montana, but now you'll notice all we have left moving into the Billings area is just a little bit of light rain down there by Red Lodge. They had some heavier showers and thunderstorms there too, but it looks like that's about all we're looking at tonight. There's no watches or warnings at this point in time and no reports of large hail. So that's the good news. This is just a little free lawn watering, and then it looks like we can start to dry up for tomorrow. We'll have more about that coming up in a few more minutes.
All right, thank you, Bob.
Well, some heated reaction tonight from Montana farmers and lawmakers after President Trump publicly dissed the importance of wheat exports to Japan.
Those exports brought in nearly $700 million to U.S. farmers last year and play a major role here in Montana. Tonight, the Montana Ag Network's Lane Nordland checks in with some surprised and frustrated people.
They send thousands and thousands, millions of cars. We send them wheat. Wheat. That's not a good deal. And they don't even want our wheat. They do it because they want us to at least feel that we're okay. You know, they do it to make us feel good.
The president made a completely inaccurate comment about the United States wheat industry and commenting also on the largest revenue market for the U.S. wheat industry, and that being Japan.
U.S. wheat producers spend millions of dollars building export markets around the globe, and especially in Asia. The wheat industry fears the president's comments could weaken those relationships. U.S. Senators John Tester and Steve Daines both responded by saying they understand that Japan is not only Montana's #1 export market for wheat, but for the nation. Daines is urging the administration to finalize trade negotiations with Japan as well. The National Association of Wheat Growers also weighed in on the current trade climate and farm economy.
The rhetoric, just because it comes out of the administration that farmers are doing great, is not true. And the fact that we continue to lose market share, which continues to drive our domestic prices down, we haven't sold any wheat to China in 2 years. We're going to start selling less wheat to Japan, even though it's the highest quality. And we're not in TPP, and we're still trying to pass USMCA. And to turn around and say that these market facilitation payments have made our farmers whole is just simply not true. And then to turn around and to say such a horrible comment that Japan doesn't even want to buy our wheat, they just do it to make us feel okay, it just really rips the rug out from underneath the hard work that our U.S. farmers put into producing such a high-quality product.
Reporting, Lane Nordlund, MTN News.
And Lane tells us the wheat growers will meet with the U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer so he can share their frustrations directly with the president.
And they're also asking the administration to strike a new trade deal with Japan, and they're urging Congress to ratify the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement immediately.
Well, Israel is now barring 2 Muslim members of the U.S. Congress from entering the country for a planned trip next week. Israel says it reversed an earlier decision to allow Congresswomen Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar in based on their support for the Boycott Israel movement. Some, however, including Representative Omar, are blaming President Trump. And the president has openly feuded with the Muslim congresswomen, who are also Democratic freshmen.
Former NASCAR driver Dale Earnhardt Jr. and his family walked away from another crash, this one on a plane. The FAA says the Cessna Citation rolled off the runway after landing in Elizabethton, Tennessee, and slid onto the highway. At some point, the plane burst into flames. Earnhardt, his wife Amy, and their 15-month-old daughter were all on board and are all okay. Earnhardt's now a NASCAR television analyst and was arriving for Saturday night's Cup Series in Bristol.
Here in Montana, 2 more earthquakes rattled the Manhattan area tonight, one of them the strongest ever recorded in this area.
Just after 6 o'clock this evening, a 3.3 magnitude earthquake struck just a couple of miles northwest of Manhattan, quickly followed by a 4.2 magnitude earthquake. Back on August 5th, a 4.1 hit in that same area, making tonight's 4.2 the strongest one yet.
Well, earthquakes have always been a regular part of life in Yellowstone National Park, but everything changed on August 17th, 1959.
Tonight, as we continue the 60th anniversary of the Hebgen Lake earthquake, we go inside the park with MTN's Chet Lehman.
August 17th, 1959, the peak of the summer season in Yellowstone. The Old Faithful Inn was full. In fact, news reports say a beauty contest was going on that night. Now remember, this 76-foot-high log structure was built in 1904, long before earthquake standards.
The fireplace here kind of twisted on its axis, so that 2 of the 4 flues were blocked. Certainly, the whole structure kind of swayed. And then in the dining room behind me, part of that chimney fell through the roof onto the floor. Luckily, it was nearly midnight, and so there was nobody hurt in the inn.
The dining hall fireplace was repaired immediately, but the main fireplace wouldn't be fixed until 2004. That night, the building was evacuated, and the geothermal features in the park went wild. More than 160 new geysers sprang to life. Even the park's iconic geyser felt the quake.
Old Faithful has always remained just that, faithful, but that 1959 earthquake did impact this geyser. Before the quake, eruption intervals were between 60 and 65 minutes. Afterwards, 85 to 95 minutes. The good news for tourists are, before the quake, those intervals only lasted 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes. Afterwards, 4.5 to 5.
So it does fewer eruptions in the day, putting out more water in each one, and then overall still puts out about the same amount of water. And the next earthquake could do anything, including shut it off. It is a natural feature. Someday Old Faithful should actually stop. That's natural for that to happen.
The Old Faithful Inn survived, but some of the park's west side roads did not. In fact, a group of campers were trapped at the Indian Creek campground for several days. The Golden Gate area was blocked to the north, and the Gibbon Falls area to the south. Park officials determined they had enough food to last until those roads could be opened. For others, escaping the park became an adventure all in itself.
This is the Firehole Canyon Drive. It's a one-way scenic road today. In 1959, this was the main road between West Yellowstone and Old Faithful. When that quake hit, those rocks fell, this road was closed, and that forced the Park Service to use a road that had been abandoned for years to get people out of the area.
That was open for the first time in decades, and park visitors were allowed to use it to escape the park, and many did, up a small dirt road with a tiny steel bridge. And it hadn't been open in decades. It was closed as soon as they had the roads open, and it would never open again.
It would take weeks for some of the park's roads to be reopened, but visitors kept coming, just from other entrances. While no buildings were lost to the 1959 quake, it was an eye-opener for Yellowstone.
I think that really did impact how we manage our historic structures, as far as making sure that we go back and retrofit these buildings to protect them for the future, and anything that we build now, we make sure that it is, up to great standards for seismic activity.
As for effect of another quake on the natural features, new geysers will form and current geysers will cease, just like has been happening in this area for hundreds of thousands of years. In Yellowstone National Park, Chet Lehman, MTN News.
All right, thanks, Chet. Now, coming up on your Q2 News at 10 o'clock, a breast implant maker is recalling some of its products after they're linked to a type of cancer. We'll have that story.
And in sports, some of the top names in rodeo let it ride on opening night at the Yellowstone River Roundup. Scott will bring us all the thrills.
You're watching MTN News with Jeanelle Slade and Russ Riesinger. Storm Tracker weather with Bob McGuire. And sports with Scott Breen. This is the 10 o'clock news on Q2, Montana's news leader.